SuperTalkStudio.org. And if you have a man cave or maybe a she shed, or maybe you just like beer and deer, do I have your attention now? Well, then I've got an ultimate must-have for you. Joining us in the studio is Ryan Lubker. He's the co-founder, co-owner of Beer Deer, and it is a company that creates decorative 3D wall art from heavy-duty cardboard, but it's the story that's so cool. So welcome, Ryan.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you very much.
And if they go to supertalktv.com, they'll see you. You're in the studio with me today. And I love the fact that you and I have had this date on the calendar for maybe 6 weeks-ish now. Mid-December, I think, is when I first reached out to you and scheduling and all the things. And lo and behold, we landed on National Beer Can Day. And I thought, well, what is the odds of that we would have landed on that day together? You knew it all along, didn't you, Ryan?
I don't know if I could say that, but I'll take the credit.
But you'll take the credit. Okay, so our question for today, just to get you in, I know we have a lot of beer lovers out there, so I figured it would be fun to share. Are you a can guy, or gal, bottle gal or guy, or are you a draft kind of person? Let us know how you best prefer your beer. 601-879-4395 on this Monday afternoon. Okay, Ryan, how did this all get started? Because it's so interesting. You now have a thriving company called Beer Deer, but this wasn't ever sort of in the works for you. So take us back to the day that it just sort of clicked to create this 3D wall art from cardboard.
Well, funny enough, the company was never intended to be a company until the opportunity kind of forced itself on me. I saw an idea just somewhere online. I think it might have been Pinterest, for just a plain old deer head made out of normal corrugate cardboard. And I thought it was a really cool decoration that I wanted for my own room, but I wanted to do it myself and I wanted to do it cooler. And one thing that I could think of that was also made out of cardboard that would really up the cool factor on the design was beer boxes. So I sat down and I started cutting away at beer boxes and made this three-dimensional puzzle deer head out of those boxes and hung it on my wall. And several months later, I was kind of messing around with social media at the time. I was on TikTok, and I decided to just make a short little 6-second video of what was on my wall, thinking that other people would also find it cool, but not thinking that they would find it cool enough to want to spend their own money on it to buy one. But it almost instantly went viral. It got a couple of million views and just thousands of comments accumulating saying that people wanted to buy them. And at that point, the opportunity just kind of was there, and it would be foolish not to capitalize on it.
Well, I mean, you brought together two things that so many people, at least here in the South or even in college, love, and that's their beer and deer. And then you put those sort of two things together, and you kind of made it personalized. I mean, because everybody, I think, has the idea that if you drink canned beer, or I guess bottled beer, you have those boxes sort of lying around, and this idea that you could somehow turn them into art that could also be, cool to look at, I think is intriguing for anyone. Okay, at this time, and I know you're a senior now at Ole Miss, so where were you in your schooling when this all first started?
So when I made the very first one, I made it just before spring break of 2020, right before the whole fallout with COVID-19 happened and we got sent home from school and all that. And then when I came back in the fall to school, it had been hanging on my wall at school. I hadn't seen it. I had almost kind of forgotten about it because it was literally like 2 days before COVID hit that I had made this first one. And I took a video of it once I got back to school in the fall, so at the very beginning of my junior year. And that's when I posted it, and it went viral. And literally within 2 days of posting it, I had a website up and running, taking orders. So everything just started happening really, really fast.
You're definitely smart enough to know to sort of catch on, when things start to get interesting or when people have their interest to get it going. I mean, did you have any idea how to keep up with the orders? And I know you mentioned the first one was obviously made out of beer cartons, or not big cartons, beer cardboard or boxes that I guess you or your friends or whoever had lying around. I mean, come on, you're a junior in college. I mean, that's just something that's part of it. I think you were using something that everybody has lying around, either their apartment or their dorm. Well, maybe not their dorm, but their apartment or just sort of around wherever they're living. So yes, you sort of just ran with it. But I kind of want to go back because it's not everybody that says, "Oh, look at these discarded beer boxes. Let me create something cool." There has to be kind of a creative side of you that was already there. Have you sort of just tinkered with creating things or making, art out of other stuff before this, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd definitely say that is the case. That at one point in time before this all kind of consumed my life was my way of just relaxing and having fun. I would always come up with these crazy ideas for like do-it-yourself projects or like see inspiration online and just run with it. I would write it down in a notes part of my phone, and every time I had some free time, I would just kind of run with the project, and that was my way of having fun. And this was just one of those ideas that I had written down however long before and just happened to get around to it when I did. So I definitely had a lot of experience just making stuff and doing projects either around the house in terms of home improvement or just like fun decorative items, just random stuff like that.
So the deer head went viral on a little TikTok video you were showing how you kind of put it together, or I guess you showed it on your wall was sort of the thing. Okay. And that's the original one is the only one that's actually made from you sitting there cutting out cardboard or boxes, correct?
Right.
Okay, so but how did you know to go from there? All the orders start coming in. I mean, what's next, Ryan? Because I would think, in my mind, I'm already overwhelmed for you, thinking you're going around to all of your buddies looking for empty, beer cartons or whatever you can sort of get your hands on to keep up with the orders. But you obviously had enough smarts to know you weren't going to be doing that during your off hours. So what happened? I mean, you said you had a website enough, but when the orders started coming in, how did you fulfill those orders?
So at first, it was just a pre-order link. So all we did was set up a website and said, pre-order this now. So we were getting that revenue coming in to then figure out how are we going to use this money that we got in to create a product and create a company. And right around that time is when I also partnered up with my current business partner in the project. He was an experienced e-commerce professional who had a lot of connections in the online retail and manufacturing spaces. So he kind of took the bull by the horns on sourcing a manufacturer. We found someone to produce these, and with all the pre-sales that we had done, we had enough capital to place that opening order and get products in, and we started shipping about 2 months after.
And that would be Chris Wood.
Yes.
So did he find you, or did you find him, or how did y'all find each other?
He found me. He saw the TikTok, and the way he always says it is that he wanted one for himself, but it wasn't available, and he just saw the opportunity, and he reached out to me and said, hey, you have a great idea here. I like what you're doing, trying to get this off the ground. I have the experience and the ability to kind of work with you on this. Let's do this together. And being that I was a student in college, I knew that I had to focus my priorities on that, especially since I never would have expected the company to grow to the size that it did, especially as quickly as it did. I just thought it would be a little kind of side hustle, like make a few extra dollars here or there.
How many did y'all pre-sell?
We ended up pre-selling almost 7,000 of them.
That's stupid. I mean, in the best way possible. I mean, it's crazy to me because if you're following along with Ryan's story, I mean, it was just literally a DIY project and then a video on TikTok. But you were still, I guess, clever enough to think, like, let's just pre-sell it and then be able to sort of figure that out. And was anybody, or is anybody, ever say anything about it not being handmade? Did they think that was going to be part of it, was the fact that it was made from actual, beer boxes? Or do they really not care? That's just really cool looking and they're rolling with it?
We've actually only had one or two people say anything about them expecting it to be made out of actual cases. A lot of people really appreciate the more sturdy and high grade materials that we use on it. It kind of adds to the experience. What I was really surprised at is a lot of people are not expecting it to be a cardboard material at all. We've had to go back and kind of add some clarity into the
wording,
item description and everything, because we've gotten a surprising amount of people inquiring about why it's not made out of wood or tin like they're expecting. They're expecting a metal sculpture.
It was a cardboard box.
Exactly.
Do you have the original head?
I do. That one's hung up in my room still.
And that one's hung up. And then Boone in George Springs, Mississippi loves a cold beer. It is National Beer Can Day, along with talking with Ryan, who's the co-owner of Beer Deer. We're going to have that and more coming up next. Weather Channel. And it is National Beer Can Day, which is just great. And the only reason why I'm really celebrating it is the fact that it goes perfect with our guest who's in studio with us, Ryan Lubker. He is the co-founder and co-owner of Beer Deer. And it is a company that is creating decorative 3D wall art from heavy-duty cardboard. And it all started as just an idea is it your dorm room or apartment there in Ole Miss?
I was in an apartment at the time.
And it sort of went viral, and it went viral quickly. Okay, I read where you utilized some of the tools there at the UM's, I guess, Haley Barber Center for Manufacturing Excellence. I mean, that is like, do y'all have a shortened name for that building or that place? What do y'all call it?
It's a mouthful, so we just shorten it to the CME.
There you go, the CME. So, did you go to your professors and say, "Hey, I need in the CME," and use some of the tools, or is it part of your maybe classwork?
It was not part of my classwork, that was for sure, but I have used a lot of the resources that the CME provides for some of those projects I was talking about a few minutes ago. They have a lot of resources for us to use in terms of machinery for personal projects, and I had done probably half a dozen personal projects in the CME building up to this point, and at one point I kind of talked to the guy who was heading up the area where we are able to work, and I said, is there any kind of restriction on materials that I'm allowed to work with in here? And they were like, well, as long as it doesn't hurt the machines, like, you can use whatever you'd like. And I took that as a green light to bring in a whole box of beer boxes and just started using that material. And
nobody was like, oh, Ryan. I mean, it was empty. There were no cans or bottles around, so I guess it really doesn't matter. Was anybody interested in what you were doing?
There was definitely some questions, and I tried my best to explain it, but even I didn't have a fully visualized idea of what I was trying to do. I was just kind of working on it and seeing what it turned out to be. So it was really hard to get that image into people's heads, so I just started saying, I'll show you when I'm done.
So the original one, how many smorgasbord brands of beer made up your original deer?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but probably 15 to 20.
Well, y'all have some diverse taste there in your apartment. And sort of, yeah. I mean, and you have to sort of think about how you were putting it sort of together too creatively. How did it work? Did it build kind of like a puzzle? Like when you started cutting it all out, did you kind of have like, because literally it looks like, and I think, oh, help me out, Rhino, because there are toys as kids that you can put together, and they are kind of like slits, and then they go together and they kind of build out. Now, they don't build deer heads or anything like that, but I mean, they're smaller, and you can make kind of like
dinosaur skeletons. Most popular,
and sort of things like that. If you can remember, did it kind of do that way, or was it more? I guess I'm asking, what was the process of it building it out? Was it glue? Was it slits? How did that work?
Yeah, it's all slots.
Slots. That's a better word.
I cut out each individual piece, and then all the pieces kind of interlock perpendicular to each other through these slots that just match up.
Yeah.
And it just builds out as a 3D puzzle that just kind of interlocks together, and gravity holds it together.
And so now that you have them being produced a little bit more quality kind of material or different, do you still get them in when if you order a beer deer, do you put it together yourself, or does it come already assembled?
You still put it together yourself. It comes with an instruction sheet, but it really is kind of a puzzle. So it's like an activity and a decoration all tied into one. It comes in 8 sheets of material that have been die cut, so you just have to lift the sheet up, and the pieces will all be remaining. They're all labeled with how to go together, and you slide them together according to the instructions, and it just takes a few minutes to put it together, but it's still a pretty fun experience to get it all together.
Chris from Oxford said Legos. I knew the word Legos. I knew that, but that if you've seen it, which you can totally go to Beer Deer, I think it's .com or
it's .co
or .co, and sort of see them for yourself. I mean, it really is kind of this. It does look like an interesting sort of 3D puzzle. In my mind, I was always almost thinking that you use like a 3D printer to sort of do it, but it makes more sense now with the slots and sort of the interlocking that way. Chris also said a moose Moosehead beer box would be a good one. I know you guys have sort of branched out a little bit from deer. So what all products do you have now?
Well, that's funny enough because the first animal that we have available that is not a deer is our booze moose. So we have branched out into some other animals, and a moose is one of them. We have another animal coming up in about 2 months that hasn't been announced or released yet, but I'll tease that we have a aquatic creature. We have a fish coming your way for the spring release. In the past, we've done a red, white, and blue eagle, but that was a limited edition 4th of July release. We did 1776 of them last year for the 4th of July in 2021. But yeah, right now we just have the deer and the moose.
And because they're being produced a little bit more mass-produced other than you making them by hand, there are only like 3 deer, right, that come in sort of, you mentioned there. Well, how many different deer styles do you have?
So we have 3 variants. We have our original, which is just like a hodgepodge conglomerate of different brands, kind of like the original one that I made myself was. And then we have a Bud Light exclusive deer, which is all Bud Light boxes, and a Busch Light exclusive deer, which is, again, all Busch Light.
And William in Cortland says, have you gotten any backlash from beer companies about logo infringement? Did that ever even cross your mind? Or was there, I mean, I'm sure they're happy to know that there are other things that people are doing with their, with their products. They're drinking it first and then, using it.
Yeah, that was absolutely a concern at first. And after about 2 months of not hearing anything and just kind of holding my breath waiting for it, I was just like, well, I'm going to reach out to them. So I reached out to all the major beer companies, and they gave it a green light. They absolutely loved it. They're big fans, and that's how these exclusive deer have come to be. We built a relationship with Anheuser-Busch, and now we have the ability to do the Bud Light deer and the Busch Light deer, and hopefully we'll be expanding on that soon, but this was kind of a test run.
Spoken like a true do it and then just ask for forgiveness. I'm just going to put this product out there and hold my breath and hope I don't get in trouble and say, I'm so sorry. It was TikTok, sort of a viral TikTok video. But of course they would like it. Why wouldn't they? It's sort of
free advertising.
It's free advertisement sort of for them. Okay, when you move past the deer and then you do the booze moose and now you have your aquatics one that's coming up in the spring, is that your mind, Ryan, that's having to go back to the very first sort of way that you did things and draw everything out in terms of how they're going to interlock and build out? Or is it now a little bit easier that the process, because I would assume the way you make a moose is it's the same system, but it's different. Like it's different. It's a different build out. It's a different animal.
Right. It's a similar concept, the same slot organization system to put it all together. But when it comes to the actual design itself, I'll typically provide a rough sketch to the factory designer, and the factory that produces these for us will then have their engineer put together a true professionally done design that's properly engineered, so it's not just off the top of my head. It's done professionally. But yeah, I'll draw up and sketch up concepts, and they'll make it actually work in the factory.
So what I find interesting too, Ryan, is you would think, as most would, that it would be men that would be purchasing the beer deer, which I'm sure you had a lot to date. How many beer deers have you guys sold?
Over 35,000 of them.
It's crazy. In less than 2 years, right at 2 years, two and a half?
A little under a year and a half.
A little under a year and a half, so not even 2 years left, and there's 30,000 plus beer deers now hanging on walls across the globe probably by now. Okay, you would think that it's men, or it would be frat boys, if I can be, say it that way, or whatever. But you have a lot of ladies who are also into these and purchasing them.
Yeah, that was our first big eye-opening readjustment when we started doing paid advertising for these. Is it seemed like our ads that had the demographics targeted towards women were doing much better than the ones targeted towards men, and we kind of did some research into why that is, and we came to find out that over half of our customers are women aged 40 to 65 who are buying these animals as gifts for their sons or for their husbands, for the man cave, their college age son or their husband. So
It's so funny because most women are like, there's two types of women in the world. One that'll let their husbands hang their deer heads, and then one that's like, won't. And now I guess there's a third type who's like, sure, you can hang the deer head and a beer box, head of a deer if you would like to do that too. We'd like to get to know a little bit more about Ryan. You are still a student there at Ole Miss. I'm curious what you're majoring in and what the future looks like. Coming up next year, it's free, and it's free too to tune into SuperTalkTV.com. You'll see I'm not alone. We are continuing our conversation with Ryan. He's the co-founder, co-owner of Beer Deer, which is a company that creates decorative 3D wall art from heavy-duty cardboard. And it all started in your apartment where you took leftover, I guess, beer cartons but cardboard boxes, and you created a 3D deer head to hang on your wall. Literally, that's it. TikTok video, millions of views later. You are a business owner and making big strides. But before that, you were a student, or still are a student there at Ole Miss. So what is your major?
I am a business management major with a concentration in manufacturing through the Center for Manufacturing Excellence that we were talking about a few minutes ago.
So before Beer Deer took off or was even a thing, what was like your goal? Like when you graduated, which you'll graduate May of this year,
yes.
What were you hoping to do with your life?
I was and still am hoping to get into product development and project management for consumer goods companies.
I think you're well on your way to that, Ryan. Okay, you are, 22 years old?
Yes, 22.
This is crazy to me. Rhino and I, during the break, were thinking back, what were you doing at 22 years old? It wasn't founding, or co-founding a great company. What did your parents think when you made the first one?
My mom I showed it to my mom, and she said, you should sell these. And I told her, I don't think that I could get myself to make another one. The process was so much of a pain. So she was always kind of on board. And then once it really took off, it kind of took both of my parents aback. And they were just kind of watching to see what would happen. But now they're very supportive about it. And they're always interested to know what's going on and hear the latest.
Is your professors or anybody there at sort of the Maker Center or the CME, I think is what you guys call it, also taking notice, trying to see what you're doing, how it helped other students sort of think through that kind of process? Oh,
absolutely. So when I was making the first one, the coordinator of the makerspace, which is the area that I was working in, Mark McNally, he really helped me a ton with that. And since it's developed, a lot of other teachers have taken notice. I've had some teachers who even have them hung up in their office who are
that's
customers.
Cool.
And I have kind of one big mentor within the CME who's always checking in on me, asking if there's anything he can do to help. So Tyler Biggs is really, really helpful on that front.
See, I can imagine your parents being taken aback, because even I would be, Ryan. It's one of those things where you hear about the maker places. I know there are those type of, departments. Mm-hmm. Now at Ole Miss, I know there's one at Southern Miss. There's one at Belhaven that's the colliding between their engineering and their art department. I'm sure there's one at Mississippi State of some kind. I mean, they're popping up. And I normally think of just like the 3D printing or sort of some of the other technology. But like us oldies who graduated, who are in our 40s plus, to think about creating a job around these, tools or technology is hard to sort of fathom. But man, kids your age and coming into college, the ideas are endless of what you can sort of come up with or create with this new technology. To you guys, it's just something else on campus. We didn't have that, Ryan, back then, I think is what I'm trying to say about that. And tell parents, allow your kids to be creative. You never know what will come out of some of these different departments and classes at our universities, for sure.
Right.
Okay, you graduate May 22 or 2022. Unfortunately, I'm sure they'll keep you around.
I'm sure, but I'm not ready to go. I'm definitely looking forward to kind of getting out into the real world and starting my true career, but I'm really enjoying Ole Miss. I love every second of it, and it's just gone by way too fast. I'm not ready to head out of Oxford quite yet.
I'm sure that they would have a graduate program that if you were interested in their Ryan, that you could probably be a part of, for sure. Okay, you said, though, product development, like getting into would you see yourself, obviously expanding Beer Deer, but do you see yourself like working for another large product I guess, organization? Like, if you had to choose, Ryan, like, what's your dream, I guess, organization who creates products? Like, before you created this thriving company, like, where would you have wanted to end up?
That's still a question that I'm asking myself, because although Beer Deer is incredibly successful right now, I'm able to manage it side by side with my course load, and have been since I started it. And I've done summer internships and managed this alongside. So my goal right now when I graduate is to go out and work for a company that does develop consumer goods products, and still maintain Beer Deer alongside of it. So I'm still in a similar place in terms of post-grad as I was before this came around, just looking for the perfect fit of a company to see where I want to end up. I'm not really sure yet.
Because I guess when you think about it, it could be anything from, I guess, for me, it would be, as a dietitian, more of like food product development is always very interesting and fascinating to me. I've had the opportunity to see behind the scenes for some companies, like your Crafts and your other big ones. But then you've got like toy companies. You have just, when you stop and think about it as the consumer, we don't give much thought to how the product got to the shelf. We just appreciated that it's there, and then we buy it, and we either like it or so we don't. But there are a lot of steps that go into that being, where it got to today. I mean,
there absolutely is.
Even just taking your product, the Beer Deer. Okay, if we've got someone listening to Good Things, Ryan, and they think this is super cool and they want to get one, you said that you guys are...
We are currently sold out. We got wiped out by Christmas, but we are accepting pre-orders on our website for when we restock. It's a good problem to have, I suppose, but we were just expecting our inventory to last a whole lot longer than it did. We sold out 2 to 3 weeks before Christmas even happened, so we have just been cleared out and trying to keep up with those back orders and get everything out, but we're just not able to fulfill right now, so we're working on it.
That's okay. At least putting that honest claim out there, and they can keep watching or looking for it. Is there anywhere online people can go to maybe keep up with the orders, or when they'll be ready, or what you guys are up to, or when your next release is going to be?
Yeah, so we have Instagram and Facebook. I believe both of their handles are Beer Deer USA. And we are taking pre-orders on our website if it's more of a set it and forget it kind of thing, where you want one and you don't want to keep checking back. You can just go ahead and place an order now, and we'll ship it to you when we have them in stock. But that's on our website, beerdeer.co. And in terms of new releases, like you asked, I alluded to the fish a little bit earlier, and that should be coming out around mid-April.
And we did get a question talking about a land shark, knowing that you're an Ole Miss boy, and you have thought about that. You've thought about getting into the realm of, I guess, college sports or those type of things. Or is that an idea? Could it come one day? Are you sort of swirling around with it?
Yeah, I toss around ideas in my head left and right. You wouldn't believe the amount of branched out concepts I've had from this. And I just remind myself to take things one step at a time. Right now we're just going to be working on expanding to a few more animals, and then expanding to more exclusives like that Bud Light and Busch Light, try and get as many brands represented as possible. And once we hit that point, then we'll kind of see which other ways we want to branch out. We're just on a pretty long track right now of product ideas that I don't want to dilute my mental thought process too much by taking on too much.
Could you imagine what life would be like had you not made the TikTok video?
I'd imagine it would be a lot more similar to the rest of my friends, and not too dissimilar from my life. I have this extra responsibility, but it consumes my thoughts a lot, but it doesn't consume who I am. I'm still doing all the same stuff I would be doing otherwise. I just kind of have a few more opportunities to come do fun stuff, like be on this radio show or travel to different trade shows and experience different things, make new connections. It kind of just broadens my horizons, but I think I would be doing pretty similar things.
Well, I think it's an inspirational story, Ryan. Number one, you just never know right? When you have an idea, run with it. You should encourage your kids to be creative, to think outside the box or with the box, I guess you should say, because you just never know where, someone gets a spark or an idea, and then it will snowball into a successful small business, which for you was Beer Deer. Who knew, right? Like, who knew this really cool piece of art would wind up being a really cool opportunity and gig for you right here out of Mississippi. What, 30,000 plus now strong?
Yes.
Beer Deers hanging on walls everywhere. Well, I look forward to having you back to see what you do next. So keep on keeping on, Ryan. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
All righty, you guys stick with us. We've got more for you coming